Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Terror Train from 1980. So, Terror Train has also gone on and had a remake, and then that remake had just done so well that it had a sequel. So, me just bizarrely finding out and remembering about Terror Train the night before, then looking into its other movies, I think this one is to, of course, be much more iconic. And I think the other movies are to probably just be on the cheap. But if it seems that people are interested in it all together, we will probably go on and check them all out. Just can see how they all play. Anyways, so I'm going to go on and more than likely do an intro that is to seem very much more Twilight Zone than it probably should be, or I don't even know if I even go on and do intros so much like Twilight Zone now. I don't know. But imagine you're in a world where people go on and do these things called magic tricks, go on and make things appear seemingly out of nowhere. Huh! This thing appeared right in front of your very eyes, and it will disappear all that quickly. Oh wow! Oh, I am a magician because things disappear out of frame. Sounds are to be coming out of rear ends, and it is to be some kind of magical ability. Doves are to be flying out of people's hands for reasons I don't know why, but they happen. I don't know why it's a trick, but it is. But so, in hats, rabbits, you know the same old song and dance. But what we're really trying to much more focus on here, if we're just kind of getting lost in the weeds of trickery, there is to be one trick that is to go on and be the main focus of this movie, which is to really be misdirection. Making you go on and think the Statue of Liberty is there, but then when you look there, it is gone. Like a certain magician would make you believe that a Statue of Liberty was gone, but I'm like, dude, the Ghostbusters, did that exact same trick, and if anything, they further went on and made it appear in New York City and crushed a police car. I think their trick was a little bit better. David Copperfield. So, misdirection. I'm going to go on and, of course, instead of just straight up going into what happens in this movie, I'm going to misdirection you and compare you to a number of films that is be somewhat similar to this movie. And there's probably going to be a whole theme tied into these films, and more than likely you could probably come up with one on your own. But anyways, firstly, I would go on and state characters like the Toxic Avenger, Valentine, which is the David Boring-ass movie, where we would have a dance that leads to a person going on and getting traumatized, and they otherwise seek revenge upon these girls upon this Valentine's holiday. There's someone inside the house. That actually is just a really visually interesting way of a character just kind of putting on other people's faces and taking people out. It's freaking awesome. And then lastly, there of course would be Fade to Black, a movie that bizarrely has a character with a bizarre fascination with Marilyn Monroe, but once we kind of just get past that weird goofy thing that's going on there, we then come to find out that our main character, the villainous character, is to cosplay in a number of just iconic movie characters and murder folk for revenge. Why am I stating all of these things? Because if anything, we go on and we legitimately root for the villain in this story. You can probably go on and have some other examples of this. Eventually, the later and later the slasher movies goes, we just kind of really do root for Jason and Freddy and whoever the heck could be the the slasher character that day, because we're just kind of getting bored of just seeing the interchanging characters that just don't matter in every single one of these sequel films and upcoming projects. It just loses its value at some point. But so, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, I could just chuck that out there. It's not exactly like this film, but it's somewhat close. Freddy Krueger, The Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a stretch, but somewhat. But so, now that I've compared all those things, made you want to root for all those villains, we now go on and have to explain this movie, and why I'm to go on and say misdirection. So, we have a guy named Kenny, who it seems is going to some holiday party thinking that he's going to get laid, because bizarrely, at some points, freshmen need to get laid for some weird, goofy reason. How much there is to supposedly promise so much nudity in this film, there's very little of it. So little! Ah! But so anyways, Kenny ends up going on to think that he is going to be able to have a night that he can remember forever, in a good way. But instead, he ends up having this one moment ruin the rest of his life. Going on to make him twist and turn within these bedded, like, sheets of sort, and have him disappear for 3 years. Bizarrely, we coincidentally have every single one of those people 3 years later all wanting to appear upon a train. What a just bizarre coinky-dink that is. No one has a fear of a train. No one has any just, like, problem with small spaces. They couldn't have just bowed out that day. No? Alright, okay, I'll buy into it. So, all these people go on into this train and get a magic show by David Copperfield, the guy who would go on and make the Statue of Liberty disappear. But then again, the Ghostbusters could have gone on and done the exact same feat in Ghostbusters 2. It's not that big of a deal, David Copperfield. It's not that big of a deal. But so, we then go on to have this be a party where people are wearing costumes. Considering this is exactly 3 years later, what exactly party is this? Not quite sure. Because rationally, like, 3 years prior, they say that it was New Year's, but then we also have Doc who's telling a story about Christmas. So I'm like, when has things been taking place within this film? But I guess, like, there is just a lot of movies where there's always be, like, a school prank that just goes horribly awry. And this ends up being that one. Kind of like eventually Carrie. Dang, man, I'm just flowing all these just... You're rooting again for the villain. Yeah, have her slaughter and murder all those people that they're gonna laugh at you. Yeah, murder them. And then in Carrie, the Rage, Carrie 2, do it all over again. But that time, end up having a guy get hit with a A gun in the dick. Yeah. If you've never seen Carrie 2, you're missing out. Because, guy, down below's hit with, I think, a bizarrish uh, water weapon of sort. I don't know. I don't know what exactly that was called. A harpoon gun or something? I don't know. It's been a while. But so, he does. Moving on. So, we go into this party, whatever it is. 3 years later, let's just say it's New Year's for safety's sake, even though it's probably just a reunion thing. We have the killer that goes on and is to be wearing these costumes of the people he's to go on and kill. And I'm like, yeah, like, this is such an awesome idea. Like, going from person to person to person. And when we are to go on and even think, like, oh, like, they're going to go on and have this person obviously be dead on the floor. Wait a minute. This person's not dead on the floor? Wait, what? Misdirection. Going on and telling us that there is going to be the murderer somewhere within this cast, and we have to go on and focus on who that person could be. Misdirection. We're going on and possibly thinking at some points for certain characters that this is all just some weird, goofy prank. Misdirect. So I'm not going to go to that well too much, but man, if only I could have just said that one more time to just cement what I was saying here. So, this movie gets really interesting, but also is to be just a very slow build of a film. A lot of times, our villainous character has only so many people to kill, and yet so often, like, he goes from like following one person to then all of a sudden another person is there, and he's just like, oh, I'll kill this one instead. Come on, man, go after the one you were going for. Don't just all of a sudden just be like, well, I guess I'm just gonna go after this one because it seems easier. I'm forced to talk to this person any goddamn ways. So how about I just kill him there? All right, sure. So I did like how this movie tries to go on and not give you the average horror film. Like, I can go on and enjoy that one Mel Gibson movie where he is the DJ radio disc jockey film, and I can go on and enjoy movies like Cry Wolf, the horror film, because it's something drastically different. It makes us assume we are going to go on and have this movie be done a certain way, and then when it doesn't do that, we're like, oh, okay, all right, like, man, this is freaking cool. But with that, for how this movie is to, like, legitimately to be the way it is, like, how we don't, I think, get enough kills in this movie when we have a whole train full of people that should die horrifically. And yet, like, we only have, like, what, 5 to 6 some odd people that he really rashly has to kill in this film. Anyways, so with that said, this movie I feel is a solid, good film. I would recommend anybody going on and checking it out. I feel bad from grading it honestly that low because of how just kind of unique it actually is. And like, it creates just a lot of rewatchability. No matter how many times you've seen it, you're still going to enjoy it because it has those unexpected twists and turns. So This movie is available on Tubi, TUBI, and also Amazon, as well as also on Tubi. The other Terror Train movies are available. The remake and the sequel to the remake. I don't know how you're gonna go on and do that. Like, are you gonna do just like I Know What You Did last summer 2 kind of thing, where like one character, the final girl, just comes back with a whole nother cast of people? I guess that would probably make sense. But so I think it's about that time to just break this movie down, because I kinda, in almost a way, talked about this movie and just kind of get into the nitty gritty details. But then when I'm going to go on and go further into breaking all this down, I'm going to hopefully give people a much more understanding of just the misdirection and all the stuff that I've gone on and said already. So with that said, let me know in the comments below if you are to be a fan of said Terror Train. Maybe you're at some points just a Jamie Lee Curtis fan and you went into a movie like this, or maybe like Prom Night, or rationally other more iconic movies that Jamie Lee Curtis is known for, like probably Freaky Friday to some of you guys out there, or The Fog, or Halloween. She's done a lot of shit in her life. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Moving on. So let's get Everything Everywhere All at Once and go into spoiler territory, because I think it's about that customary time of me singing and dancing and getting into my phone. That is to have a cast list, or whatever I insist is to help me be able, besides my brain, to be able to pop and lock this list out for you today of what is to have happened with this within this whole entire film. I think it's about that time to just go on and do the dance that people say is a really just needing thing, but I do it anyways. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time. I'm going to spoil this movie. Pause here. We'll get back. Same bad time. Same bad channel. How's it hanging? To the left? That's what I thought. Anyways, so I had to come back with something bizarre. I just had to. So, very beginning of this film, we have a New Year's party, or Christmas to some people. Yeah, I was all alone as just this janitor duty, and there's a body, and it's during Christmas. It's New Year's! It says New Year's right in the beginning of the film. Moving on. So, we have these kids all at this seemingly prep rally, it seems, but it's New Year's, so they're just doing a lot of just high schoolish or college stuff. But I'm also just kind of thinking, like, what all connects this? I am very confused at it. But anyways, so they go on and take this effort to go on and put together this big, huge, massive sign that says Happy New Year's and has a bunch of Delta, Omega, Super Awesome, Delish symbols upon it that they go on and they carry and then they toss into the fire. A lot of effort they had to go on and do just to, like, pop. So, we of course have all these men in leather jackets together, and we have these characters, they end up calling them beanies, but they look like yarmulkes to me. And honestly, like, yeah, it just, like, I guess that was to just be beanies back then, but I'm like, man, like, could you imagine just wearing that kind of stuff during the winter, having it supposedly keeping your head warm? Clearly, it's not gonna work. But so, and also it's winter. They're doing things in the winter. So we have all these freshmen. They're wearing their beanies, and they won't be able to take the beanies off until they get this thing called laid. Why in every school movie there has to be this bizarrish pact of people having to go on and get laid. But then again, I don't think there's enough nudity in this film. There's probably one person just to have dropped some pantalones, and that's about it, and that is to be a woman. We seriously don't go on, and for the ladies or some of you guys out there, get a man in his six-packiness? No. Heaven forbid that ends up happening. To just equal the playing field of movie. Anyways, so we would have this character named Doc who's going on and talking to these freshmen, one of them ending up being Ed, who's probably a dick, Ed. And so Doc ends up going on and talking to this kid named Kenny, who luckily they don't kill so quickly in this film because South Park would just make that a running joke. So Doc turns to Kenny, and he's also looking at Elena here, who's Jamie Lee Curtis. It's like, hey, see that, Kenny? There she is. And like really just kind of prepping Kenny, like, hey man, like here's your time. You're gonna go on and you're gonna get laid. You're gonna stop wearing that beanie. And Ed's needing to figure out, like, well, hey, how am I gonna get laid? It's like, well, you're gonna have to figure that out on your own. So we also have this other freshman who's named Prez, and he is not gonna go on and probably get laid. And the one guy ends up turning into him and it's like, hey man, like maybe if you just kind of grab a boob, like then like maybe we'll just make a deal for you, like we'll go on and just kind of give you some sympathy and just like, because I don't think we're probably gonna get a drunk girl to just like give you some sloppies. I don't know, like you're just gonna go on and just kind of bargain with what you can get here. So we have Kenny who starts to make his way to Elena, and Lena starts making her way to her place, and it seems that everything is getting organized. So plans have been had this day. So Doc goes on, and before he leaves to do his little prank here, Ed is just like, hey, Happy New Year's, buddy. Happy New Year's, Ed. So we have Elena that makes her way into the room of where she needs to head, and she's talking to her best. I almost thought I said something there, and I was questioning whether I said it or not. Best friend. Her best friend for life. So this, of course, is to be Mitchie. And regardless of some joke that I could probably easily make here, it's not going to happen because I don't want to be bitchy. Anyways, so Elena goes on and talks to Mitchie and like is to just kind of compliment her on her costume, and or kind of, I think she just kind of dresses a cowgirl here. So the two of them push on to where Elena is gonna have to go into this room to just kind of like prepare for where she has to just kind of stand. And so both Elena and Mitchie, so like Mitchie is to state like, well, yeah, like if anything, like there's going to be another person in this bed that Kenny is going to start making out with, and supposedly from what Doc had told me, it's one of his friends that he knows. So Elena is just like, all right, okay, like no harm, no foul. Like this is just a possibly innocent prank that is going to ruin somebody's life, and we're not even going to realize it. But oh well, hey, just roll the dice, just see what happens, you know. So Elena goes on and is to be like on the other side of the bed, not like on the bed at any, just kind of like on a side where Kenny cannot go on and see her because these sheets and curtain things that are just kind of all around the bed. So Kenny's going on. He's kind of hesitating. He's kind of just like, I don't know. Doc goes in there. Is like, hey, champ, come on. Yeah, like, come on. Go for it. Yeah, you can do it. Like, believe in yourself, Kenny. Yeah, so Kenny goes through with it. And so Kenny opens the door and is like, Elena? It's like, oh, hey, hello, Kenny. And so Kenny, I guess, realizing, like, okay, like, I guess I should go on and just start taking off all my clothes now. And he has his undies and his tank top on. And he's kind of questioning whether or not he should take off his pants. And Elena goes on and says, like, well, hey, like, don't be shy. Like, this is my first time too, Kenny. Even though, in all honesty, I've probably gone on and made out and slept with. I'm just joking. So, I'm sure that that Elena had probably gone on and been with a good number of somebody that day. Anyway, so Kenny goes on and takes off his pants and strolls into bed. And so that's when a bunch of the fraternity guys all rush in and they just start laughing and and Kenny goes on and realizes that this is all just some elaborate prank. And so eventually he tries to escape the bed, and then when he notices what he had gone on and been in bed with was a rotting corpse, making Kenny freak out and start twisting and turning within these curtain sheet-like things, rattling and rattling around, and into the point to where at first his cries and screams are to just be very and there's like oh, and I'm like, man, like he turned into a werewolf or what's going on here? Like, man, would that have been an interesting twist of this film? Like, all of a sudden, Kenny just turns into a werewolf and just starts murdering everybody. Man, would that have been an interesting tale? But sadly enough, that's not what played out here. So, Kenny starts ending up sounding like a very slow-motioned man. So, something has happened this day to change this man forever, sadly enough, and had gone on to have Kenny be pushed into a mental hospital for seemingly 3 years, give or take, for good behavior. I don't know. But later on, we come to find in the film that Kenny had already had some trauma that these people did not go on to know about. That Kenny had gone on and killed somebody before being a part of this prank. And it was all just an accident, but still, like, I'm sure, like, that really affected his life. And then on top of that, this horrible prank was to just turn around and just be the icing on top of the crazy cake. So, 3 years have passed. So, there's to be this bus, and a number of people just starting to haul out of it. And we start to see a number of people in costumes We have the guy who's to be called the Prez, who's legitimately just wearing just kind of patriotic costume. Like, is he Uncle Sam? Is he a president? Don't know. It doesn't seem that that is clearly clarified. They just call him Prez anyway, so he must just have that costume. And so Jamie Lee Curtis's character is dressed as a pirate, and her boyfriend Mo is to be a parrot, which was kind of fun. Couples dressing together. And we would then have guys like Ed coming out, and he's wearing this kind of just Groucho like costume, whatever that means. But anyways, moving on. We have Jackson who's going on and making the speech after Ed is to make a number of just train jokes that are just so stupid, caboose in a way that would make me say that I don't want to talk about any single one of them, no matter how all aboard it really is. For me to want to desperately. So Jackson goes on and say that this is the last college party, but it's going to be the best. To the last 4 years of their lives. And more than likely, the time is ticking on some of these folks. About how much life they have left to live. So at some point after it seems Ed is to make all these stupid jokes, meeting with the conductor that brings out this one porter where they're going on and just kind of laughing at this group. Oh, all these idiots. So they all sort of have this kind of weird just trick box. It has this finger trick thing. It's very stupid. And later we'll find that the killer who's dressed as Ed is having the finger chopped off in that little thing. It's funny. So we have Ed who ends up having this blow-up doll, which I'm sure is to save his life one day when he is drowning in his own tears. Tears after going on and watching movies like Chicago, which I'm sure he's watched a number of times, I'm sure. As well as you have on countless endeavors. So the conductor is going on and seeing all of these just goofy-ish people that are to be among these students, and almost to state that like the circus is kind of in town with all these people. So the conductor makes his way to meeting up with the entertainment for this night, and that of course is to be the magician himself, known as Ken. So the conductor goes on and is helping Ken with one of these crates, and he turns to him and he's like, well, hey, like, you must be the city slicker of this outfit. You must be the guy they brought in as talent. And we have Ken who's like, well, I'll try to be. Like, I'll try my best. So as people are to start to kind of pile into the train, we have the conductor that makes his way to a girl named Maggie who's in a wheelchair. Not that that has any bearing of weight on this character all that much. He's just to kind of briefly be here, and then we go off into the train. So the conductor is going on and asking about the weather, and is also asking if the track is clear. So legitimately, like, we also have the conductor who's asking Maggie, it's like, well, hey, like, why don't we have like a radio on the train? Because if anything, Belknap had gone on. Belknap had gone on to state that this was always put as a uh, Amtrak in uh no wait. Amtrak were just a little old excursion train. That's what he said. So I was getting the word because Keltnap goes on and puts the kibosh on things, and that's where he talks about the we in an Amtrak were a excursion train. So they also go on and they talk about how like the group that they are kind of dealing with is a flea circus, and we of course have the conductor Karn who ends up asking Maggie. It's like, well, hey, like, do you want to come with me this time around? And Maggie's like, with that group of people, not on your life. So we start to have people making their way into the train. I'm sure a lot of the porters are just like kind of getting a call of everybody there. And one person turns around and notices that Ed is having this trick of him having a sword. Seemingly, it looked run through his body, but legitimately it had run through his body because he had gotten stabbed. By who? We don't know what. There are certain times that people are just to be dead in this film, and we don't know why. So we don't have a lot of people to be killed in this film, and then on top of that, we don't see how they die. They just end up dead. But again, it's misdirection. It's going on and just kind of giving you this surprise death out of nowhere. So Ed falls to the ground, and everybody's like, "Oh my god! Like what a act! Oh my god, this guy!" So the killer goes on and is to collect the costume piece of Ed, and then goes on to at some points be Ed, and then also is to be uh the alternate person that they are to be within the train. I'm not going to go on and call the killer Ed or Jackson. I will probably just have to go on and state like what costumes that they're wearing at whatever time, but I won't always state that. So if you get confused, then check out the film. So everybody's to make their way on to the train, and so people are starting to go on and pick their rooms, and so Elena is to be in a room next to Mitchie, and so they're going on and they're talking here, and as they're talking, they end up at one point getting interrupted by this bunny. But so Elena is talking to Mitchie and how more than likely she won't go on and see her very much because Elena is going to need to go on and figure out a job to pay for college because it's really expensive. And so Mitchie ends up standing up and like, well, hey, like, why don't you just kind of go on and marry Mo so you won't have to worry about any of that? And Elena's just like, no. So, but also, like, the two of them are going on like, well, hey, you're my best friend. Yeah, you're my best friend. And they end up hugging and having this just wonderful time to just have us be heartbreaking when obviously Mitchie's going to die because Jamie Lee Curtis is the final girl. She is. She has to be, because she's to have only been, out of, I feel, anybody, probably the more innocent out of specifically the beginning of this movie. Somewhat. So we then turn around and we have a girl named Pet, who really is just kind of wearing these pants just over her ladies, her balloons. Uh you know what I'm talking about. A very double entendre. So, and then she's having suspenders and bow tie. So, like, this girl is gonna otherwise be dropping some pants at some point in this film. She's gonna be the only one. Well, Ferrari technically had 2 pants dropped, but still. We have Pet that goes on and is asking Prez, like, well, hey, like, have you seen Eddie around? And Prez is like, no, he's going on and murdering and killing everybody. I don't think he really is gonna just take some time for you, Pet. Like, you're gonna eventually just go on and, like, forget that Eddie even exists, and you're just gonna have to go and have to either, like, sleep with Mo at some point in this film, or just try to figure out where you can go on and just lay your head for that day, because you're not gonna get killed. So we have the conductor, the brakeman, and a guy who I think is just kind of shoveling coal and is kind of running the train, as well as the actual guy who's just kind of on the switches and the toggles to eventually uh, take us to where we need to go in this train, or on this train. So the guy who's shoveling coal and the conductor going on and they're talking, and they're mentioning how they're gonna end up in life, and how the conductor is mentioning how, like, he's gonna end up on the Condort, and that the guy shoveling coal is gonna end up on welfare. And we have this magazine that the conductor has, Korn, and it's this RV magazine. And so the guy that's gone on and shoveled coal, he's looking at him and it's like, well, hey man, like, what's the price of gas right now? It's like, you know what? Like, the only thing that's going to be holding on to your beer is just a flat car and not a thing like that. So we then would have Ken, played by David Copperfield, who, in all honesty, is kind of doing the very basic of magic here, but then also, like, the movie sets up that this magician normally goes on and performs at like these 6-year-old birthday parties. So, like, this is to, like, be forced to have David Copperfield just be at this low level of magic. And so we have Ken that's looking on through these curtains and looking at this roster of people that he's going to need to perform to. And he's stating, you know what, this is a rotten crowd. Like, listen to him. Like, I feel that I really need to go on and, like, really figure out a way to just kind of get their attention, because it's gonna be just so easy for me to lose it. And, like, he probably feels that he's probably gonna have to go on and to have to really prep for, like, what's to go on tonight. So we then turn around and have a cluster of guys making their way to the host lounge, and certain people are just kind of barging in. And so Doc tells the people who are just kind of barging in that don't belong. It's like, hey, like seniors only. Like we're just kind of taking these folks. So people start to just back away. So the group ends up starting to talk about Hog Night, and that is, I guess, some tradition. They used to call it that for some bizarre reason, and eventually those would eventually come to a close because of one prank that happened one year. And so that forces them to go on and recall what had happened the night they had gone on and pranked Kenny. So Doc ends up telling the story, and it's a state that, like, well, yeah, like, normally all these things are just kind of simple jokes, but, like, this one just kind of went out of hand one year. So we have Doc, who is working at this medical center, and most of this job, what it entails is to really just have him just really be a janitor more so than anything else. And he would come in to find that there is just some body that is just rotting there on a Christmas. So he decides, like, like, what can I do to this body? What can I do to have this be something special? And then Elena just starts to break in, and she's like, yeah, like really special, like put a kid in the hospital, like it ruined someone's life. So we have the killer. He's in the shadows, dressed as Ed, and he's just kind of waiting by the door, just like, man, if I only can just start killing people instead of waiting for this all to play out. So we're having the conductor talk to the guy who's just kind of running things, and like just kind of making the train just chug along. He's wearing the gray hat. So the operating train guy, and so the operator goes on and turns to the conductor, and he's saying like, well, hey man, like how's the RV business going these days? And so like the guy, like I think the guy who's shoveling coal is looking at the conductor like, well, what is he talking about? And the operator is like, well, yeah, like this guy, like he's just really into just kind of figuring out RVs. And Karn, who's the conductor, is like, well, yeah, like my main reason for wanting to go on and just kind of really look into RVs is like I really should have gone on and retired like a decade ago. And like I'm still doing this. I'm still here. And so like we just have another character in the film that is just so close to retirement. Like from all of those cop movies that we've ever gone on and seen, like I'm sure that this one scenario is going to be that this guy is going to turn around and come back to Maggie and just be like, hey man, like I'm freaking retiring. Like this one thing just set me over the edge. I'm done. I'm retired. Um, because this guy already has it in his head that he's almost out the door freaking anyways. This is gonna push him out the door. So, but he should have been out 10 years ago, not 5 years ago. So, anyways, we have Misty. Or Misty. Um, Misty? Yeah, that's probably not the name. Um, Mitchie, my bad. Mitchie's going on and talking to Ed, and she ends up kind of looking at the box thing that has the finger rolling around, and so the two of them are talking, and there's a possibility that the two of them are going to go on and they're going to have some fun on their own, because it seems that Doc and Mitchie are to have an understanding between one another that they can just kind of play around with whoever, because that is just be who they are, I guess. So Mitchie goes on and it's to grab Ed. And like it seems that she's gonna have fun with Ed, but then also like she's saying like, well, yeah, like who's that girl that you're with? Like, what's her name? Pet, right? Maybe we're gonna go on and just do some role play, and someone else is gonna be a pet tonight. I don't know. Anyways, so all of a sudden, as the two of them are to make their way through this door, all of a sudden we have Jackson who's coming in with this kind of lizard-like outfit, almost Godzilla-like in some ways. But we're with these costumes trying to avoid not to be anything but generic. I don't know why that is. Like, I guess there is such a massive fear of some kind of lawsuit or something. I do not know why that seemingly any Halloween kind of film would always have to have just generic costumes a lot of the times. I don't know what it is. If I knew that, that would be freaking sweet, but I just don't. I don't know why. It's always generic costumes. So, as Ed is to have gone and thought he was going with Mitchie to probably kill her off, instead, Jackson is here, and so Jackson is talking to Ed like, "Hey, like, you know that trick that you did with that sword and the chest? Wow, like, uh, you really just like made like a spectacle and this and that of yourself." So Ed is going on and just being like, "Okay," like, and probably in his brain, it's like, "I can kill you too." So the further and further that they're starting to talk and Mitchie is further and further leaving, Jackson is going on and telling Ed, well, hey man, like, do you want to go on and you want to like share a drink? Like, how about we just go into this bathroom and we'll share a drink together? So it seems that Jackson has already had a little bit too many here. So they go in the bathroom together, and more than likely because of the mask of this costume, that is probably heavily making this guy sweat and dehydrate, as well as also consistently being drunk, not doing this guy any favors. So this guy is starting to get a little woozy here, and he is going on to kind of lose track of his drinks. And so as Jackson is going on and trying to like, okay, Jackson, like, get it together here. And then he starts to turn to Ed. Ed ends up grabbing him by the head and is to take off his mask to reveal who he is. And Jackson is now in terror, and Eddie shoves Jackson's head into this mirror, which I don't understand whatsoever, ends up killing said character. Or even when we turn around and see that this costume character is to supposedly have blood somewhere upon his body, I'm like, but how did he die? Like, was his head crushed? Like, what kind of force did the killer have here to have killed Jackson into this mirror? Because like we have a whole rubber suit that is to be forced into a mirror. Like what real impact could rubber on a mirror? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm logically just kind of like, there's no way there could have been any kind of real death happen, but who knows? Like, I guess rationalizing it, you could probably have the glass just kind of go into some kind of hole somewhere in the costume. So, anyways, back to Elena, Mo, and Doc. So Elena's like, you know what? I've always ever wanted my own train, but this is kind of lavish. This is ridiculous. This is weird. So it seems at first that Elena is to have thought that like this whole idea was Mo's, because Mo was to make Elena believe that this was his idea, so Elena would go with him. So we could have both Mo and Elena here with Doc on this party, because more than likely, if Elena wouldn't have gone, then Mo wouldn't have gone, and then Doc wouldn't have had this moment with Mo here. So Doc has to go on and explain to Elena, it's like, well, hey, yeah, like, Mo has the bread, I have the ideas. Like, so really stating that, like, brain and brawn kind of situation here between the two of them. So we have then also Doc, that is to say, it's like, well, yeah, like, hence another idea. Doc had gone on and kind of done something to the drink that he had kind of handed off on people. And Elena is like, wait a minute, like, why do you always have to go on and do things that hurt people? Like, why can't you just go on and just, like, just do things do things without any just kind of malice or repercussions or whatever? There's always just some kind of upsmanship that he always has to go on and do here. So this argument between the two of both Elena and Doc leaves Elena to just go on and leave. And we have Mo that tells Doc, like, I'm gonna get you for this, Doc. His very pirate like voice is like, yeah, and I'm serious. That's what Mo says to Doc. And he leaves. So consistently Mo is trying to convince Elena that regardless of this actually to have been Doc's idea here, like, it was a good idea, right? Like, it was to be something that we really did want to do. And so Elena is just like, well, yeah, like, but like, that doesn't make up for the fact that at some point, like, Doc is going to go on and have us, like, ruin this whole night via some kind of whoopee cushions or, like, exploding cigars or freaking a murderous rampaging killer that is going to go on and just have sought out revenge, waiting 3 years to go on and do so. You know, like, whatever he just has up his sleeve tonight. So we consistently go on and at certain points have people trying to go into the bathroom and they realize that the bathroom is locked for obvious reasons because there's a dead body in there. So they have to go on into other bathrooms, or at some point we have like the brakesman who goes on and tells certain people like, I'm sorry, but this bathroom is out of order. So both the Carn and the brakesman, who I believe is Charlie, they're talking to one another, and they're talking about the smart Alex, who of course they're just kind of dealing with tonight's train, and so eventually we then get both Elena and Mo that are to just kind of further explore the train, and we again have Mo that is asking Elena. It's like, well, like, well, hey, like we have a magician here, like, and like, aren't you kind of just like, if anything, just kind of impressed? We have a magician, and so Elena's like, well, okay, like I'm finally impressed, and Mo's like, ah, yeah, I gotcha. So we have that conversation being interrupted by David Copperfield performing the most just kind of common of street magic like things that he could probably go on and accomplish here, to the point of us immediately probably knowing every single one of how these tricks are to go on and easily been done, because it is not that to be so hard to believe how this trick has to actually been done. So while Elena is starting to walk by, we have Ken that turns to Elena like, hey, can I borrow your quarter? Goes on and takes her quarter, and is to also take this cigarette. He ends up putting the cigarette in between. He ends up putting the cigarette through the quarter. And he then goes on to even smoke the cigarette to prove that it's like, yeah, this is a working cigarette. This is not just some goofy trick and whatever. And then he goes on and pulls the cigarette out of the quarter, and then he makes the quarter disappear. And so Elena's like, well, that's good and great and all, but I need this quarter for some nuts. And so so Ken goes on and turns around and is to work the machine to where more than likely maybe like tilts it without her knowing it or something. But she ends up going on to twist this crank and nuts end up coming out, and it's like, oh wow, like he performed some magical trick. The quarter obviously had a hole in it. He had a trick quarter that he made disappear. And so really that is to just be easily that gag. Like this guy just has a quarter with a hole in it that. So if it seems that magic is going to be the theme of tonight, we also would have the Carney, the conductor, was talking to the brakesman, and he's telling him like, "Hey man, like pick a card, any card," and we have the brakesman is like, "Well, it doesn't matter. Like, I can't go on and I can't gamble because it's against my religion," and so the Carney says like, okay, you're no fun." So at some point, because like the brakesman just kind of won't play around here, the Carney eventually goes on to just kind of find some people that he can just use this trick on to just kind of have some fun. So So some of the girls are starting to get restless because Eddie is just consistently gone missing. Pet is trying to go on and try to figure out where he is, and she can't find him. Mary is to go on and be tied to Jackson, and now Jackson has disappeared. So Mary is just kind of so fed up at this point that she's like, you know what? Like, you know what? If Jackson does find his way to meeting you guys, like, I'm going home. Tell him I went home. Because it's funny because there's nowhere for her to go. And even Doc ends up telling Elena that the main reason why they chose a train was so that way there was no way for her to escape this whole endeavor. Very well thought out plan. So we have Elena and we have Mo who get into this argument that really sets up that, like, this is going to be an argument that is really just going to separate the two couple here, where Mo is even stating that he's like, well, like I think me and Elena at this point are just having this weekend break where I can just go on and just get laid with other women, because it seems that also Elena is really infatuated with Ken and wants to see where that goes, it seems, in this film. So Elena is going on to throw shade at Mo here because Mo can go on and do so much better than Doc. Like, he can go on and find 10 people way better than Doc. And Mo is just saying, like, well, but Doc is my best friend. And Elena is like, well, maybe you need an enemy. Like, maybe you have too many friends. And, like, the further and further they just start to argue and they just start to they go into this, like, the more we're realizing that, like, rifts are happening between the two of them. So the conductor goes on to find both Doc and Mitchie, and he ends up performing this magic trick on him. So he goes on to tell them, like, okay, like, think of a card, any card. So it's like, okay, like, do you have the card? And so it's like, well, yeah, like, it was Jack of Hearts. And so we have the conductor that goes on and states that, like, well, not only has your card mysteriously risen to the top of the deck, but it is to also have been upgraded to the Jack of Spades. And weird, goofy, funny jokes, just like, well, hey, at least it's the Jack. It could have been like, oh, two clubs, and just be like, huh? So, we have both Doc, we have both Mitchie, and they're making further with the conductor, and it seems that Mitchie is really needing to go to the bathroom, and that has Doc just saying, like, well, hey, like is there just some kind of emergency that could possibly need me? Because technically Doc is a doctor. But so it seems that eventually the conductor is going to go on and make his way into this bathroom, because when he goes on and knocks on the door, no one answers. So the conductor is going to eventually be forced to open this door, and find Jackson laying there all bloody, and is going to eventually need to turn around to Charlie, the brakesman, and tell him this horrible thing that had happened upon the train. But so the conductor is to go on and tell him a alternate bathroom for them to go on to. So because they're rushing back because they realize that they need to see the magician perform. Really, the doc I don't think has any real interest in seeing this magician perform, and when he does see him perform, it's like I know all these magic tricks, like, oh, this is just like the weaker hand magician stuff. Like, come on, like, give me something. So we go into this act, and a lot of it right out of the hand, so to speak, is to be a lot of playing card, sleight of hand trickery here, which of course, like, is freaking awesome. But then again, like, it's just sleight of hand. So we're just kind of seeing these cards just kind of consistently coming out of his hand and going on and on and on. So both the conductor and Elena here are talking about, like, man, like how does he do it? And the conductor is just like, oh, like, well, hey, I can tell you, but like, if anything, like, him and I are magicians, like, we're sworn to secrecy. So we turn around and have Ken, who is going on and now needing his assistant to do this just kind of floating table like trick. And I'm like, well, obviously, like, anybody could probably also know how this is to have all been done, because what ends up actually happening is we have the magician who's to bring in this huge hula hoop like thing that is to go on and, like, come around the girl. But there's to be this one little thing in the middle of this girl that is actually holding the girl up. And there is some kind of weird thing that is to actually, like, just kind of be a forklift or something that is to be strong enough to actually hold this girl up and to be able to lift her in this manner. The whole disappearing thing more than likely could have just been like, and cut, and she disappears. So, and we have Ken that goes on and is doing this trick, and again, like, he has the hula hoop where it doesn't go into the center, and it just kind of loops around. I'm like, that's how it's done. So we have Mo and Doc and Mitchie, and the question is to be asked, like, well, hey, where is everybody? It's like, well, watching the magician. So Mitchie leaves, and of course, yeah, the other question is asked, like, okay, like, where is Jackson? Where is Ed? You know, the two guys that are dead. You know what? If people really cared about these people being found, they would have found them already. But, like, they just keep asking where they are. Like, I guess it's to really just state that I guess the train is just so big that, like, they couldn't have been bothered to look for two whole people. Because I've gone into whole huge massive casinos to look for two people and find them. So logically, a train I don't think should be that hard. But then again, what do I know? So Mo realizes that his relationship with Elena, like, is coming to an end here, and we have Doc who turns to Mo. It's like, well, hey man, like, if she really does dump you, like, you always got me. Like, you always have me. Like, I'll always be there for you. And Mo was like, yeah, yeah. So We have Elena who goes on and is asking the conductor about one of uh, the guys who they may think had gotten left behind, who was Ed, because they can't find him anywhere on the train. So we have Elena who goes on and asks the conductor, it's like, well, is it possible that, like, one person didn't go on to make it on the train, and the conductor is like, no, like, we, like, made sure that everybody made it on the train, like, we kind of double checked and didn't see anybody, and, like, the conductor also mentions to Elena, it's like, well, is it a possibility that, like, this person could be under, like, a different costume, a different disguise, without you knowing it, and surprise you? Could be a possibility. Also, with more than likely a better costume to be placed upon somebody to make a movie more interesting, like a lizard costume, it could happen. So we have Mitchie that is talking to Elena. It's like, oh, no, 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 like, Ed is here, like, he's in the Groucho costume, like, I saw him. And Elena is like, oh, yeah, like, oh, I guess he is here. Oh, okay, all right, well, conversation to have ended this day. So both Doc and Mo are going on and talking to Mary and Pet, the only two people who it seems are just missing out on lovers because they're dead. So Pet makes her way back to Doc and is telling him, like, man, you should have seen that magician. He was fantastic. And Ed is just like, yeah, whatever. Like, who is David Copperfield, really? He's just the guy that has just made an amazing freaking just lifetime worth of being able to, like, consult and whatever, all of this just magical and stuff and whatever. And I'm sure, like, schools have been made in his name and what, I don't know. Moving on. So Mo is just like, well, you're just ticked off because, like, you just can't figure that out. You can't figure out how he's doing it all. So, like, that's your gripe. So now, instead of them going on and checking anything out with this magician, instead they're wanting to eventually have something popping out of somewhere, and it's not going to be a rabbit out of a hat. So Doc is going on and turning to Mary, and Mo is seemed to be left with Pet. And so Doc is saying, like, well, hey, like, since you're here and we're here, like, you know what? We were, at one point, like, gotten awards for emergency gynecological wards wards last summer. Like, hey, like, maybe we can definitely go on um, and show you how we had gone on and gotten those, if you know what I mean. So Doc and Mary start to leave, and then Mo and Pet are to follow. So Mitchie and Elena, they're together, and Mitchie is going on and wanting her and Elena to dance. And Elena's like, well, what about the guys? It's like, come on, let's just just have some fun. So here's where Doc and Mary, like, Doc has now gone on to this bathroom and it is just consistently locked at this point. And the conductor comes back And it's like, okay, like, this bathroom seems to be consistently locked. Like, what's going on? Like, what is the problem of why this is locked consistently? And it's like, well, could be something serious. So the conductor forces the two to go on as the conductor is to open this door, and that's when we see the dead, bloody lizard that has a bottle in his mouth. So, more than likely, maybe, legitimately, if the actual mirror did not go on and kill said man, maybe we can just rationalize that, like, but there's blood all over his head. There legitimately is blood. Like, how did he go on and then, like, break the mirror and then take certain pieces and then just start stabbing into his head? Could that be the rational reasoning for, like, just wounds and bloody mess? I guess we just have to, even though we turn around and have the costume later on that is also just intact. So what the concussive, the severely concussive blow of getting I guess. So, because eventually the conductor goes back into that bathroom to find a thing of toilet paper where blood had gotten wiped off. Like, all right, well, yeah, there was a dead person in here. So Elena goes on and is to be dancing with Prez. And so the Prez looks at Elena as like, you know what, like, why aren't you happy? Like, out of everybody that should be here and they're just happy and they're smoking weed and they're drinking and they're probably not having enough sex like they probably should in this kind of film. I'm not naming any names or pointing any fingers, but somebody should be doing somebody. Or doing somebody. Right now, somebody should be dead. Tons of people. So, the president's talking to Elena. It's like, well, hey, like, you know, if you want to talk, like, I do have a compartment that we can go to. And he's like building it up. Like, yeah, like, I have a better compartment than anyone else is. Like, I have satin sheets and, like, I have a jacuzzi. And, like, Elena's like, really? You have a jacuzzi? And Prez is like, come on. Like, it's no different than any other compartment. But, like, the Prez is just trying to put the moves on Elena. It's like, I'm trying to figure out how I can just, like, just have Elena just throw caution to the wind and just, like, just regret her life choices and just be with the Prez. So we have this band that ends up playing in this movie, and I think they're called the Crime Band. Bizarre, I don't know why. But so we have the conductor that makes his way to Charlie, and he's desperately. Oh my God, we're already at an hour and a half. Oh my God, why does this continue to happen every single time? Oh my God. Oh, I have to rush now. So the conductor talking to Charlie is saying like, "Hey man, like I need something stronger in my alcohol, or stronger in my. I need something in this coffee that is stronger than coffee. So like, hey, you got any liquor around?" So uh, and Charlie is looking at the conductor. Is like, "Man, you've seen a ghost. What's going on?" And the conductor has to go in and explain that there's a boy dead in the back. He's in the sleeper toilet. So we have Mitchie that goes on to be smoking some weed from off of this donkey. So the conductor goes on and he speaks to the operator, and they're trying to figure out like how they can make it quicker to a town. So like, okay, we just need to just kind of like gain some speed. We just kind of need to figure out how we can go on and get there as quickly as possible. So certain people are going on and trying to get to the bathroom, but the brakesman is like saying, "Oh no, this is out of order." So the two of them make their way into this bathroom to realize that no one is dead within it, and the person who is to now be the lizard is getting up, and it seems that he's fine. So Mitchie ends up going to see who she calls D-Jack. It's like, oh my god, D-Jack, yeah, like it does seem like he does go on and get very sick, and let me go on and let me take care of him. And so we have Pet that is talking to Mo, and Elena's like, or Elena, Pet is saying to Mo, it's like, well, hey, like you're with Elena, like, what's going on with that? And Moa's like, well, yeah, I think we're on a break, specifically for this weekend, so like we can kind of just do whatever we want. So there, some of the characters are going on and starting to thumb through the yearbook, and they of course eventually gloss over to the page of uh, Kenny, and again, this is kind of just reflecting on this character. So D-Jack uh, and Mitchie are making their way to this compartment. And so the two of them are going into this bed as Mitchie is to just kind of force D-Jack in there, as both Doc and Molly are kind of leaving the room that both Mo and Pet was. So Mitchie and D-Jack here, like Mitchie is realizing that it seems that the two of that couple are going on and having some fun, so why not them? So D-Jack goes on and puts a hand on Mitchie's chest, but then Mitchie comes to like, well, hey, like cold hands is warm heart, but then is to look down on the hand and realize that the hand is detached, and then the killer ends up taking out his hand and putting it over her head to just kind of silence her so he can kill her in private. So while Prez is going on and talking all of his political nonsense, we have Ken, who is to kind of re-meet up with Elena and is to perform another trick where he ends up making this rose appear out of nowhere, and then he starts to make this rose float. And so Elena is starting to just kind of put her hand over to just kind of find out where the wires are. So when Doc starts to make his way here, this separates the two of them. So Doc ends up telling Elena, it's like, well, hey, like, you know that Mo is sorry and so am I. So like, hey, I'm trying to like create an olive branch here. Like I'm trying to make amends here. And also like you should probably go on and like go and see Mo where he is with Pet, but she doesn't know that. But like, hey, yeah, you should go and you should get with Mo so that way uh like he can kind of just make up for all the things you've kind of been going through for tonight. So Pat starts to go on and says that she wants to dance, but then the more and more that is to really dance, she's really just want to shake her thing to just take her clothes off. So the conductor is wanting to go on and talk to one of his men about how like there still has to go on and be the whole breaking of that mirror. Like a lot of stuff is just still not adding up. So we again have Ken who's starting to perform certain acts of magic. To now have Doc, who's also checking out these performances. So we have the conductor who notices that there is just some shoe that is to be on the ground, and he looks at this one compartment and realizes that there's a dead woman in there. So the conductor goes on and is to ask Elena, like, hey, do you know who this shoe belongs to? And Elena says, oh, yeah, that's my best friend, Mitchie. And so the conductor turns Elena to this certain room and tells her that Mitchie is dead. But then also, when Elena is trying to get to the room that Mo's in, Mo realizes, like, oh my god, like, Doc had turned on me, and now I just kind of have to just quiet Pet as I'm trying to sneak out of here, so that way, like, Elena doesn't know, like, I was almost fooling around with this girl. So Mo finds out that uh that Doc here turned on him, so he makes his way to Doc. Is like, hey, I need to talk to you. I know what you did. And Doc is like, hey, relax, enjoy the show. So the conductor goes to Elena and is now showing her Mitchie's dead body because Elena doesn't believe it. So we now have Ken, who's performing mental telepathy and uses Mary as his uh, kind of woman helping him perform these tricks because his other girl is just disappeared. So supposedly, Mary here is to have needed to have shown the people a certain number, which ends up being 7. And he ends up putting a curtain onto him, and Doc makes a joke of like, man, I hope that he like forever disappears. And Doc is like, well, is there any way that you can disappear? So Doc, all of a sudden, is to have the sheet over him, and Mary is to then lift the sheet, and Doc appears from off the distance and says that the number is 7. It's like, ooh, wah, he just appeared out of nowhere. There isn't any trapdoors or anything like that. So, how did he do this? Editing. So, Elena and the conductor are trying to rationalize who could have gone on and could be the murderer in all this. And the conductor is like, well, maybe it's just some alcoholic or some kid on dope. And Elena's like, no, like, if anything, like our school does have a history with a guy named Kenny. And so they're starting to possibly realize that they need to figure out who could be Kenny here, as there's been a lot of time that has passed, and maybe Kenny had gotten plastic surgery. Any number of situations could have happened here. So Ken is now going on and doing his magic trick where he makes his co-host appear again because he needs her. So he goes on and is to lift this sheet above him, and then when the sheet goes down, his co-host appears, and Ken is now off in the distance in the back of the stage, now coming back into the front. Like, aha, just a quick change, magical maneuver here. So the conductor goes back to the bathroom, sees the toilet paper full of blood. So Doc all of a sudden realizes that Mo is doing more than just pretending to sleep, as Doc is to pretend he's sleeping because he hates this act. So Doc is now grabbing Mo here and rushing him through the train, screaming and yelling for help. So this then goes on to have Doc and Elena and the conductor, they all meet together and like, okay, all right, like let's go on and like let's assess this situation, whether he's dead or not, if like is he breathing. So all these costume people are making their way through their path, and the conductor kind of shoos them away. So once the doc is to go on and examine Mo, he starts to realize like how bad the injury actually is. And so they're more and more realizing that Mo is dead. And so now Doc turns and is asking, where is Mitchie? And then uh, uh, Elena is to go on and tell Doc that Mitchie is dead too. And Doc is like, no, 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 no. Like, Mitchie's still alive. Like, where is she? So Doc, now just so upset at this point, is going on to pull the brake cord for this train, and the conductor rushes and is like, "Oh my god, everybody, like, hold on!" Like, he's pulling on the brake. So all of a sudden, the train is not braking, and so the conductor has to run all the way to the operations of the train to now figure out a way to brake this train himself, because he had come to find that the guys who were operating the train are freaking dead. And so the conductor is pulling these operating switches so hard that they're like, hey man, like this is going to derail the train. Like, so just kind of ease off the brake. So we start to have all the costume people getting out of the train, and we have the conductor coming in with all these porters to say like, hey, like go throughout all the train, grab uh these fire axes and just start to inspect the whole entire train to kind of make sure anybody else isn't dead, or hopefully we can just find this killer as we're making a head count outside. So as the porters are starting to make their way through this train, all of a sudden, coinkadinkly, the lights go out. So like, oh great, the lights are going out. The only thing that they find is uh a blow up doll. That's all they really find. So they're going on and making a head count. They're calling out all these names, and the conductor is telling everybody to stay with their dates. So we would have one of the students that is grabbing Doc. It's like, hey, like if I hear that you have some connection to this, like I am gonna just tear you apart. So the conductor is telling everybody to take their masks off because we need to know who everyone is. So Elena finally does turn to Doc and is saying like, "Hey, like you know who this is, right? Like, like Jackson, you and me, Mitchie, and the guys." And like Doc is like, well, "What are we talking about? Like, this is 3 years ago. What? Why are you bringing this up?" And like he didn't say it like that, but he has no real memory of 3 years ago. And because he's done so many things to so many people, like there's so many people probably on his hitman list. So Elena's like, well, obviously this is about Kenny. So, and then she goes on and mentions that Kenny had gone on and killed somebody before. So, at this point now, both Doc and Elena, like, they're running back into the train, and Doc is just kind of scrambling to just like, okay, like, if we're the only real two left here, like, I'm going to go into this room and start breaking all these doors so that way like they permanently lock, and we're gonna go on and just kind of stay in this room together. And Elena is like, well, like, what about everybody else? Like, yeah, we might be safe, but what about like, legitimately thinking about it, the killer could have gone on and killed whoever was trying to man this train, and the train could have gotten derailed and killed everybody anyways. So it still would have happened. So, but Doc is telling Elena, it's like, well, hey, I'm trying to save your life here. Like, show me a little freaking gratitude. So, people are starting to go on and think that, like, well, hey, like, we need to make it to the next town, and how about we just walk to the next town? And the conductor is like, no, 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 no. Like, the temperatures are so low, you'll die. And the porters are telling the conductor that they can't find anything. So, now we have both Elena and the paranoid Doc, who's like, well, hey, like, there still is a possibility that the killer could be somewhere in this room. Kenny could be somewhere in this room. So, when thumbing back through the yearbook, Doc is to realize that at some point, Kenny was a magician. And Doc is putting it together that more than likely, Kenny is to have been David Copperfield's Ken. So, at this point, like, Doc knows who the killer is. And Elena's like, well, yeah, like, we gotta make everybody aware that this is who the killer is. And Elena wants to go on and leave, and Doc is just like, no. Like, every man for himself. And Elena's like, oh my god. So she leaves, and Doc just stays there, and he dies because of this dumb mistake. So, but he was next on the chopping block frickin' anyways. Elena leaves to be stopped by the brakesman to be like, hey, like you have to go outside. So Doc is to just start to make his way through all of these little compartments, these little closets, and like on top of the closets, and seemingly anything there's to be any kind of door within this room. Come to find out, underneath this little couch has the killer grab Doc and has him fall over, and as Doc is to go on and just be scrambling and being in fear, we have this hand that grasps Doc, and Doc immediately thinks that, oh, like, this is the hand of Mitchie. Like, they had pulled a practical joke on me. They had pulled some prank on me. And, like, oh, all of this is over. Finally. And no, it's just Doc is going to end up dead. He's going to lose his head, and the conductor is going to find him, and he's going to be freaking horribly dead. If anything, Doc should get the worst out of everybody, anyways. So, Elena is now back outside with everyone else and grabs the Prez, and they run off to find the conductor. So, both Ken and his protege are talking to one another, and the protege is talking about how she may have gone on and needed one of these swords uh, to possibly defend off anybody that is to be out there that she doesn't go on and trust, while Ken is going on and putting this sword into this box to just try to figure out this trick. So, so the girl wants to go on and get out, and Ken is like, no, like, we should stay in the car. We should stay here. So, Elena and Doc, or Elena and Prez make their way back to Doc, and he doesn't answer because he's dead. And so Elena and Doc make their way back to the conductor here, and we have the conductor that is asking the Prez, have you ever shoveled coal before? And the Prez is like, no. So Elena is going on and telling the conductor, it's like, well, hey, he's on the train, and and this is a guy named Kenny, and he was a magician. And the conductor is like, oh, like the magician, like this Ken guy, like he must be the killer. So Doc does not go on and answers the cry of his friends. So the conductor goes in the room to find that he unrattles his thing, a dead Doc. So they go into the staging room, and so the conductor gets out the protege and is to just come up with reasons for why she needs to leave, as well as anybody else who is to just kind of be left straggling and what, like, hey, like yeah, like we're having coffee in this other room, like come and meet us in this other room. So then the conductor turns around and locks the door. So the chief porter and Elena, they're secretly going to this one part of the train where he's going to watch over her as she then is to sleep, because it's well late in the night. So now that they figure out supposedly where the killer is, we have one of the guys who's going on and talking to the conductor and saying like, hey man, like I want to go on and I want to kill this guy. Like I don't understand why you guys haven't decided upon yourselves to do the same thing. And the conductor is like, hey man, like this guy has gone on and already killed like a number of people already. Like, do you really want to take that chance to see if you can go on and square off against this killer and win? Like, do you really feel lucky, punk? Do you? Kind of thing is what's going on here. And so they end up handing him this axe, and he like returns it back, and the conductor is like, yeah, I thought so. So speaking of axe, the chief porter ends up getting a sword in his chest, and there ends up being a axe being grabbed by the killer, who is now dressed as Mitchie. So the conductor goes on into Ken's stage, and then is coming up with all kinds of reasons, like, well, hey, like we're turning off the air conditioning in this room, Ken. We're turning off all the lights. Also, come out. And so nothing happens. We see no one. Ken, it seemed, had disappeared. And the conductor is to open this door and just see the end of the train, just being like, okay, where is this guy? So this then leads the killer in the Mitchie costume making its way to find Elena and be tossing this axe to try and kill her, to just find that this love doll is there instead. And Elena now has this sword from where I don't know and is stabbing into the killer. She runs off, Mitchie follows, and they're running around, they're struggling, they're mostly having the killer choke Elena here, kind of just hold her hair, and Elena fights back by having this fire extinguisher spray into the killer's face. And so Mitchie ends up going into this little, like, kind of little smaller room, into this seemingly one car. And so the killer is trying to figure out some crowbar or some kind of thing to just kind of poke through these little holes. So, in turn, when the killer is trying to make his way through this door, Elena grabs this one item and stabs into the killer's face. So, Elena is just to kind of run off here, and the killer is to follow. And at one point, we just kind of naturally assume that Elena had gotten rid of this killer and he had gotten off the train But then we'd come to find that instead the killer is just hanging on by the near hands. So Elena thinks that he's dead, and so Elena turns to the conductor. It's like he killed Mo, and they walk off. So they go on, and so Elena is going to try and still get some sleep. Mary is kind of watching on, and we have one person turn to Mary, and it's like, well, hey, would you like some coffee? So Mary is just kind of looking on at Elena, and at one point, Mary turns to Elena. It's like, well, hey, like, how would you just kind of come on back now? Like, I think everything is fine. So when Elena starts to make her way through the cars here, she finds some witch hat and broom. I don't know what the reference of that is. And uh, we have the conductor and the brakesman who are like, oh my god, like, we're almost there. Like, we're almost at the light. Let's go on and file out a report and this and that. So we also have the prez that is talking to Elena like, hey, how about you come back with us and just kind of join the rest of the group, like if you're awake anyways. So Elena goes back to the room with the magician stage stuff, and she finds this magician book, and also finds that Ken is in this box and he had gotten stabbed into and he is dead. So realizing now that it's all just like, hey, Ken has to still be alive, he must be in here somewhere. So Elena is now just running off to try and find somebody that she can give this information to, and really she ends up going to the brakesman. And this brakesman is to go on and not be who we think it is. It is to instead to have been the whole entire time Ken's uh, Ken's sidekick. So we come to find out that that Kenny was dressed up as this woman all along. So, because eventually, Kenny takes off this mask and takes off this hat and reveals that it's Kenny, but he's wearing this just wig the whole entire time. So Kenny goes on and tells Elena, it's like, well, you haven't changed, and so they're just kind of arguing and this and that, and like Elena's like, well, I'm sorry for all we did, and so Kenny ends up asking Elena to kiss him, and so she does, and that then goes on to lead Ken to like relive his traumatic event, and he is just all of a sudden now spinning around in this car and twisting into these now sheets that are on this train. And the conductor goes on and sees Kenny and sees that this door is open, and he takes this shovel and he whacks him, and he has him go flying out of the train, and he has fallen to his death into a possibly watery grave, and he's dead. I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. That's it. That's the movie. I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about Terror Train. I'm gonna try to get out of here because I know that it's an hour and a half. I've almost been talking for 2 hours. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.